Okay, time to put this unit to use. First, we disconnect the wires to the old cartridge. This was a bit more difficult than I thought. The metal connectors were very tight to the cartridge's terminals, and I was really cautious about not folding the connectors shut with my pliers. That would have been a whole other ordeal to fix. But fortunately that didn't happen, so we move right along to unscrewing the cartridge. Farewell, old piezo stylus cartridge. I didn't know your name, but you sounded decent, and I'm sure you gave years of musical service. For me, putting a new cartridge into a head shell is pretty nerve-wracking. I wasn't sure where the overhang should be at first, that is, how far forward or backward in the head shell I should put it, but based on where the old cartridge's stylus had been, and the dimensions of the cartridge itself, I was able to figure it out. I used the screws and nuts that came with the cartridge to tighten it. Some people use only their own screws, but these work best in this case. Getting the screws into the sockets and thread it properly was a big challenge, but honestly no worse than when I and my brother installed the Negaoka on the Pioneer turntable. Maybe I just haven't practiced installing Phono cartridges enough, but getting these little screws and nuts threaded around an object that wants to turn and twist is always a fiddly ordeal. It took me longer than I like to admit to remember that I could unscrew and take the head shell off the arm, which made the screws easier to work with since I wasn't against gravity, but not by a whole lot. Okay, once the Grado Green is in place and reconnected to the tone arm's wires, it's time for the part that makes every record collector's eye twitch, aligning the cartridge to track the groove properly. This, as you probably know, takes a lot of trial and error and some very small adjustments that can make a big difference. Now, there are two major protractors that are most often used to align a cartridge, Beerwald and Lofgren B. I use Lofgren B personally because it's meant to minimize distortion across the entire record, as opposed to Beerwald, which focuses on minimizing distortion at only two key points. And why wouldn't you want to reduce distortion as much as possible overall? If you'd like more information on aligning a Phono cartridge, there's a good instructional video on it here. Well, fortunately I had estimated the cartridge's overhang pretty well, so getting it aligned properly and setting the azimuth wasn't terribly difficult. Then, once the counterweight and anti-skate are set, it's time to find out how the Grado Green sounds.